Now, the series of allegations against candidate raises the following questions. Firstly, are smear campaigns a diversion from ANC politics and policies? Secondly, do media houses verify sensitive claims before publishing them? Thirdly, is it normal for smear campaigns to characterize political contests? And lastly, do scandals influence how voters ultimately decide on leadership? We now cross over to our reporter Nomusa Pumula, who's out in Ladysmith on this very subject. Nomusa, a warm welcome to you. Now, smear campaign seems to be all the talk ahead of the elective conference, with a number of politicians claiming such against them, and especially where there's negative reportage. What is the view, though, on the ground pertaining to this phrase that everybody seems to use so loosely?
Good evening, Nomfundo, and good evening to our viewers. Indeed, it's quite sad that some people would resort to going for smear campaigns against those that they do not prefer to be leaders of the African National Congress. Speaking to some members of the branches or members of the ANC earlier on, they mentioned that it does not matter what the third party says because the branches have decided, and besides, now it is too late. They are on the last leg of their BGMs. It is therefore too late now for people to come out and give negative comments or say negative comments about any of the presidential candidates, because they are the ones who are going to decide. And they do not decide based on personal matters. They don't decide based on unfounded allegations. They decide based on that particular individual's credentials, and if they feel that that person will be able to lead the African National Congress. Whether they are alleged to be funded by tobacco smugglers, whether they are alleged to have extramarital affairs, for them what matters right now is who can lead the African National Congress with dignity, who can unite the African National Congress, who can make sure that the dignity or people of South Africa go back, or rather they trust the African National Congress like how they used to before, and make sure that come 2019 the African National Congress emerges again as a leading party, as a ruling party, as the majority in this country. So what other people are saying for the delegates or for the branches, it does not matter, according to those that we spoke to here at Ukahlamba region in Ladysmith. They are saying that it is important to note that who they want is who they are going to elect, not according to any allegations that are posed against them, Fundo.
But Nomusa, is it not a bit of a contradiction here that if they're talking about ethics or ethical leadership that is sought by the ANC, then none of this would matter, whether it be something that is of a personal nature, talks to your character, if it's something that's even illegal or an association with any illegal elements? Would that not be a problem in any way?
Well, indeed, Nomfundo, it could be a problem, as we know that there are laws that make sure that they guide against those particular comments or words given or comments made against certain individuals, whether they are politicians or ordinary South Africans. Character assassinations is not allowed in this country at all, Mfundo. But also what we must know, Mfundo, is that perhaps the African National Congress has let this go on for far too long. They have not strengthened, or they have not given any laws that guide their own members as to how they deal with candidates, how they make sure that their candidates are not character assassinated, they are not going against allegations that are unfounded. They protect them against those, because before they are presidential candidates, they are members of the African National Congress. Perhaps if the African National Congress can come up with laws or policies that will guide their own members, even ordinary members, if they are commenting about other presidential candidates which are not their own preferred candidates, if they could deviate or do away with character assassination, as well as saying all these bad things about those that they are not supporting, and rather say everything that they would like to say about the one that they are supporting, all the positive things that they would like to push forward.
No, an interesting take. Thank you very much, Nomusa, who's out in Ladysmith in KwaZulu-Natal. We now cross over to our reporter, Giovanni Majani. Giovanni, a warm welcome to you. What exactly is the sentiment on the ground there where you are in Bloemfontein in terms of the smear campaign that we keep hearing of late, especially with politicians when they have negative reportage?
Definitely so. Good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and good afternoon to the viewers. We do know that smear campaigns are part of this presidential race, and we do know that everybody is going to get involved in this regard. We know that branch members have gotten involved. People who are behind the specific campaigns have also gotten involved, but it is quite a concern, stressing this unity. We do know that as individuals, you will want the person that you would prefer as president to come out victorious in December, but to the extent that you will allow this to happen is very concerning, especially moving into the ANC. But we do know today at the Kaiser Sebutelo building, which is the provincial building in the Free State, a PEC is taking place, and the main topic there is the tripartite alliance, the unity of these partners moving forward. We do know that it has been quite a tense year in the tripartite union this year, 2017, nationally, and now it has gone down to the provincial level here in the Free State, where they need to speak about this, knowing that on the 29th of November there will be a rerun of elections in Metsimaholo, which is in the Fezile Dabi region, where the SACP will be going ahead alone in those elections. It has been a cause of concern. People are saying, would this be the pre-run to the SACP contesting the 2019 elections alone nationally? But we do know that since the PEC is speaking about the unity of the tripartite alliance, we are hoping that they come out united, knowing that on Thursday nationally there was a meeting that took place at the Luthuli House in Johannesburg between the partners of this tripartite alliance. We heard from Deputy SG Jesse Duarte saying that it is going pretty well. So we hope that nationally, provincially, moving forward into December, the tripartite alliance stays together regardless of the different issues that they do bring up. Unity is being stressed in the ANC, and we hope to see this unity continue forward.
No, thank you very much, Giovanni. The alliance's unity is certainly one to watch out for. That's our reporter out in Bloemfontein, Giovanni Majani. Now, today in studio, we're joined by political analyst Kim Hela and political activist Dr. Kgoshi Mayepa. Panel, welcome to the both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, perhaps we can start in KwaZulu-Natal. Nomusa was saying that when we have this phenomena or this phrase of smear campaign every time there's negative reportage around public figures, they tend to talk of the smear campaign, but she says branch members are not fazed by any of this. It doesn't matter what is said at this stage about any of their preferred candidates. What's your take on that, Kim?
Thank you. I think it's very unfortunate that we have this very negative and toxic environment under which the presidential race is taking place. And if I may speak about the media first before I answer your question, as a media practitioner, I would just like to be afforded that opportunity to say that it's very worrying, the state of our media and the commentary that's going on at the moment. And we have to ask what is it trying to do? And it's obviously trying to unsteady some of the candidates. And to your point, I think the delegates must be very wary of this and what the intention behind it is. So I feel that the commentary for this presidential campaign is actually in a state of capture itself. And I've said before in some of my writings that the pen of today's journalists is dipped in political bias.
We keep hearing of being wary of the single narrative, where everybody seems to writing or be commenting in the same fashion.
Yes, I think indeed. But I think it is even more than that, if I may offer that. I think journalists, irrespective of what platform you're working on, your own political appetite or palette, we have a responsibility as journalists, as writers, as commentators, and as activists to always speak the truth and hold to the truth, even if that truth does not meet our own or marry our own particular views.
Now, Kgoshi, your take here. If we're talking about the dictionary meaning of smear campaign, it's a plan to discredit public candidates based on false accusations. And if false accusation is the operative word, then we have a problem, because we have some people that have admitted to some sort of indiscretion, the likes of Jeff Radebe. Then do we still confine ourselves to that identification of a smear campaign if I indeed did do something wrong?
Thanks, good afternoon. First of all, I think smear campaigns are meant for that to smear. I think that we must just put that in context, but also they are part of the competition. We should agree that post-1994, the ANC, even it's an old culture, but it intensified post-1994 after governance, that people in the ANC form blocks, which now popularly are known as factions, and those factions then push the candidates, and then now and then they come up with a story to attack other candidates and so on.
But that's the question we're asking. Do they come up with stories? If some of them have admitted, but then they still go in to say there's a conspiracy against me, but nevertheless, I would say that the story is factual. So can we still use the word smear, or is there a political definition of smear to say, again, be wary of that single narrative, that yes, I may have perhaps stolen something, but the timing must also be questioned? Do you think that there's a political definition of smear campaign as well?
No, smear campaigns are there, they're smear campaigns. The idea is to destabilize the other candidate. So what is important is that the candidate themselves must then know and dissect what is coming to them. Smear campaigns are going to happen to anyone. If I want to find dirt on you, I will. Even if it's small or big, people still do that. What is important is that the candidates should then put forward their policy positions, what they are standing for. Because what the supporters are interested in is to understand what is at stake, the policies, what will ameliorate their living conditions. Like Kim has said earlier, and like one of the commentary in KwaZulu-Natal, the people in BGMs have made the decision already. Some of them are still going to make, but they have resolved in terms of what they want to see. They have taken a position in terms of who do they want to promote as the presidential candidate of the ANC. So smear campaigns are that. They are meant to defocus. It depends on how strong the candidate and how the supporting team be around the candidate plans to de-risk all the things that are thrown at the candidate. Because if you look at what is used as smear, really, I mean, it's something that doesn't change the ANC policy, or it's so bad that ANC policy won't go forward if that candidate, so-called the smeared candidate, emerges.
Mm-hmm. But if we had to go back, Kim, if I remember correctly, the minister, Batabile Dlamini, earlier, just earlier before we really got intense with this electioneering. Now, she had spoken about some candidates who are wife beaters, that if at this point we're going to put female or women's agendas at the forefront, we cannot be having somebody that abuses women. It seemed to be something that was important for the electorate, that if you're going to vote, vote wisely. So now are we going to disregard what is said about candidates at this time? Because some would say, if at this point branch members are saying that, no, we've made our decision and I rob a bank and I'm a candidate, what happens? You're just going to disregard it at this point, or we will debate it as branch members?
I think the point that you make is very important, because it speaks to integrity, and we hope that the ANC is still an organization of integrity. So I do not believe that any expose must be covered up. It must be fully exposed, because we want a president who is worthy. But I think any expose needs to be without censor, but it cannot be on the back of half-truths or allegations. And I think we need to stick to policy. We owe it to ourselves as a democracy to stick to the policy matters of the ANC. And as I've said at a previous interview, that is what should be predominating the narrative at the moment. But yet we're contaminating this narrative with falsehoods. And I think we must be careful, both as members of the public and as delegates, not to support or celebrate fake news just because it suits our own particular perspective. And I think it's very clear at the moment that there's a web of deceit and deception, particularly around Dr. Dlamini Zuma, who seems to be the main target. And I think the reason for this is not just media ratings or propaganda necessarily for its own sake, but I think there's a very sinister motive behind this. I think it is being orchestrated by people who are worried that the apartheid after party of plenty for whites is now ending. and that she's the person who's possibly most well positioned to end that party for them. And I think there's a real fear around what they're going to lose economically. And this is war, this is commercial war. And I think the propaganda that we're seeing, which is extremely hostile against certain candidates, is part of a very, very, very clear campaign and widespread campaign. If I may use the word white monopoly capital, some people don't think it exists. I think this is a very clear campaign orchestrated by the agents and supporters and beneficiaries of white monopoly capital.
Josi, now around these candidates that we mentioned, the Zweli Mkhize, Cyril Ramaphosa, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, as well as Jeff Radebe, and it seems there's also some negative publicity that's coming to Lindiwe Sisulu. Would you say all of them need to be treated in the same fashion? We cannot have people now being alarmists or saying that Cyril must be questioned on his morality at this point for what has happened in terms of the affairs, and then we go on to say Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, this is definitely a smear campaign. Do you think with all these candidates, they have to be fair? If everybody says these are smear campaigns, let's all back off of these 5 candidates or any other candidate?
Yeah, I think all the candidates must be treated the same. All members of the ANC are equal before the constitution of the ANC and before membership of the ANC. The strongest unit base of the ANC is the branch of the ANC. So those are the people who actually make decisions about whether the character, the morality, and so on. But I think the big issue here is not really the smear campaigns. The big issue here is to divert us from what should happen in South Africa, is to divert us from the change that still needs to happen, changing the structure of the economy, pushing the ANC policy, ameliorating the socio-economic conditions of people. The ANC historic mission here is attacked, not the individuals, they're just the front line. The issue that is attacked here is to destabilize and to make sure that the ANC is weak. Because what is important is the ANC must not lose focus. As I said earlier, the issue here is that the candidates, if they lose focus, they lose the mission in terms of what they should push. Remember, people are standing to become presidential candidates of the ANC to push ANC agenda, not themselves. It's not the United States here. We are living in an ANC that has a constitution that the policies of the ANC supersedes all the other things. Now, I think candidates who are standing for position of president or whoever candidate in the ANC, the most important thing is to ensure that the sufferings of the people, the conditions are changed. So if I stand as a candidate but I don't push that agenda, I become irrelevant. Whether there's a smear campaign or not, I am not staying within the queue of what must happen. I'll give you an example. There are a number of issues that are raised that the democratic state has not been able to resolve since 1994. And that's what must be discussed in this conference of the ANC to make sure that those things change. I mean,
elaborate on those issues. What are they?
We've seen the situation today in terms of farmers who march in the street. They wear old regalia, they take the old flag, they sing the stem, and so on. Mm-hmm. Those are the issues that were not resolved. So it's something that we go back on and discuss it. So the national question has not been resolved thoroughly in South Africa. There's a lot of issues regarding economic structure of the economy, the structure of the economy that are not resolved in South Africa. Those are the things that are important, and pertinent things like that are now diverted because we have to talk about candidates and characters. The ANC...
But the characters will eventually lead us to these problems being solved, that we have to unpack who the next leader is it not? Because some would say that for us to have those questions resolved is for us to unpack the candidate that could possibly now be propelled to that office to say, okay, now you need to solve these problems. We have 1, 2, 3. So we must talk about the candidates and their abilities or lack thereof.
Yeah, because let me just introduce an important principle here. The ANC itself, for many years, has never followed a Verhoeven-Prinzip. A Verhoeven-Prinzip is German word for the leader principle. So the ANC has never based everything on the individual. The ANC has always pushed collective leadership. So the person will not come and supersede and promote himself as the president of the ANC. What the ANC branches will decide in a policy conference, in a national conference, that's what that person will push. So there is no Verhoeven-Prinzip. So the characters don't supersede the policies and positions of the ANC. There's no leader principle here, there's a collective leadership.
But then they talk about passing the test through the eye of the needle. So it means that that leader nonetheless will be the anchor. That whatever, if we're going to unpack this possible candidate, they must anchor this.
Yes, through the eye of the needle, through going through the ethical, moral standards and value system of the ANC. Because ANC for a long time has pushed management by values. The leadership character has always been by values. If you ask people who work around Oliver Tambo, we celebrated now what was supposed posthumous to be his 100th birthday, you would realize and you would hear from them that Oliver Tambo espoused the value system of the ANC. So when they say through an eye of the needle, they're talking about those values. So they're talking about a person who will be tested that can be trusted, stewardship, a cadership of the ANC, honesty. Those are the things that people are looking for in a leader. So if that leader goes through the eye of the needle, then they can push the policies of the ANC. So the test is the character of the leader based on the value system of the ANC.
We seem to be saying the same thing. Kim, your take, collective leadership, or we really need to scrutinize these candidates?
I think both, and I think your point on collective leadership is key, and in a way I think we're focusing too much on the presidential candidate when he or she is going to be surrounded by collective leadership nationally and provincially and regionally. You know, I think you made such an interesting point earlier about the kind of quality of leadership that we want, and obviously it has to emerge at all levels. And certainly through the eye of the needle, we need to interrogate that very, very closely. I'm a bit concerned how we are allowing, or how ANC members are allowing leaders to be denigrated so badly. And I think we should put our own personal preferences aside, whether it is Cyril Ramaphosa, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, Zweli Mkhize, whoever it may be. We should not be promoting this politics of factionalism and of denigration, because what happens post-December? We may be stuck with a president that we haven't voted for or wanted, and then we have to start the process of rebuilding the ANC. And I think to have such a divided and fragmented approach is going to serve the interests of the opposition, and we must take care.
No, it's an interesting take. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We have to take this poll question. Now, the poll question this week is, does South Africa need a state-owned bank to finance black industrialists? We'll be getting the views from branch members from our teams on the ground, but we'd also like your participation as our viewers at home. So do tweet us your responses. Our handle is at ANN7TV, or visit our website, rather. It's www.ann7.com. And that's where we end it. Until next time.